Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Madame Soloway, for being here today. Since this committee began investigating the ARRIVESCAM scandal, many of the public servants that have come forward about gross mismanagement have been suspended. Would you say this is a usual practice that you have encountered with this government?
I can't really comment. As you probably know, I've only been back in Canada for about a year, so I really have no comment.
Okay. I'm sure you were, when you were brought into the position, you were given a briefing, which probably would have included previous cases, and you would have done an evaluation of the historical conduct of this government, but we'll continue. Has your office been involved in the investigation of any of the ARRIVECAN suspensions that have occurred so far?
We have been seized by, I believe it was this very committee, where we had received a disclosure, and as notified, we have undertaken an investigation that is related to ARRIVECAN.
And is there any information you can provide about the investigation so far?
Only that it is ongoing.
Okay. Can you provide any information about the investigation relative to Cameron McDonald?
I cannot.
Can you provide any information about the investigation into Mr. Anthony Utano?
I cannot.
Are you aware that the IT person who submitted an internal complaint in the CBSA about Mindone's deleted emails has now been suspended?
I cannot comment.
Okay. Are you concerned that there seems to be a culture of reprisal at the CBSA?
I cannot comment.
Okay. Are you concerned that there seems to be a culture of reprisal with the government at large?
I cannot comment.
Okay. Will this government be able to improve its internal management and effectively run government programs if they suspend any public servant that dares to speak out against department executives, would you say?
I cannot comment.
Okay. Why, in your opinion, is this government so eager to suspend any public servants who speak out against their management instead of using their insight to fix the broken system?
I cannot comment.
Pardon me? Oh, pardon me. Your office currently has 161 files on hold, which is 5 times the number of cases that your office typically is expected to investigate each month. In your opinion, what has driven this significant increase in the complaints of wrongdoing?
In my opinion, it's a greater awareness of the existence of our office. It was established in 2007, and it takes a long time, typically in an organization the size of the federal government, for people to become aware that something exists and also how to access it. I can say that across Canada, my provincial counterparts seem to be experiencing the same sort of increase as I think their systems mature as well.
Based on the charts you provided us, the cases seem to have begun to significantly increase starting at the beginning of 2023. And this is the same time frame our committee began its study into the ARRIVECAN and McKinsey scandals. Do you believe that this increase was inspired by the increased scrutiny of these scandals?
I have no idea. I do not know.
The number of submissions still seems to be increasing, but the number of completed submissions has remained consistent. If you do not receive an increase in funding, what will be the impact on public servants who will not have their cases reviewed within the standard timeline?
I think that, they say justice delayed is justice denied, and I think that everybody is deserving to have their cases and their concerns dealt with in an appropriate manner and in a timely manner. Obviously, I think that overall for each individual there's a negative impact, and I also believe that for the organization there's a negative impact.
Since the report came out over 2 months ago that your office was not receiving adequate funding, have you had any positive communication from the President of the Treasury Board regarding your funding?
Since it came out in public, is this what the question
Correct.
is?
Yes.
We have had contact with the Office of the President, and our first contact was last Friday.
And
our first, not our first contact. I mean, we have reached out on multiple occasions, but our first engagement with them in a discussion was last Friday.
Okay, and how would you describe that communication?
Pleasant.
Pleasant. What changes will your office need to make if you do not receive adequate funding in the near future?
We're just going to have to keep on keeping on. We're just going to try to get to every single case as we can. There's really nothing more that we can do. To date, I have curtailed travel for many cases. We've put on hold a lot of non-staff costs, hoping that we would get the additional funding. So we basically pushed those costs into next year, but they're costs that we're going to have to assume at some point, also including the legal assistance fund. So I'm pushing whatever I can, but if we don't get more funding, I think the reality is that some cases may not see the light of day.
Okay. I still had 7 seconds, I thought. Thank you very much.
Very much, Chair, and welcome to our committee this morning, Ms. Salloway. From April 2020 to November 2024, there has been a tenfold increase in cases submitted to your office. You mentioned that drastic increase and even suggested that it will become the new norm. I do note that the number of submissions you have, it seems that only 1/3 led to active investigations, and you've already commented on the fact that you triage those and sometimes encourage individuals to take their case to another body to have resolution. Once you've determined a complaint is rightly placed with your office, did I hear you say that you have had to pick and choose which of those cases you will investigate and then put the rest on hold due to a lack of resources?
We don't pick and choose. We choose all the ones that meet the criteria established by the Act. But in terms of when can we actually start to take action, yes, that decisions have to be made because we simply cannot do all of them right away. So it doesn't impact the decision-making process in terms of whether or not we should investigate, but of course it impacts whether or not we actually can. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yes, thank
Mrs.
you.
Block, I'm just going to interrupt quickly. I've frozen the clock. We have bells ringing. Can we have unanimous consent to continue? Wonderful. Go ahead, Mrs. Block.
You also stated justice delayed is justice denied, and I completely understand that. I know you've asked for an immediate increase, as my colleague noted. I would say culture eats strategy for breakfast. How convinced are you that your requests are being taken seriously?
You know, I'm an optimist. I have to be. So I do believe that I do think that there's a general understanding of how vital the mandate of PSIC is to ensuring that there's trust in the federal public service. To the extent that that translates into a budget is a different story, and that's why in my opening remarks you might have noted that I am proposing that we move toward a more independent funding mechanism that is more directly aligned with Parliament rather than through ministries. I believe that this is an issue that has long been around with respect to agents of Parliament, and I believe that some of my colleagues, including the Access to Information Commissioner, among others, has been pressing for the same sort of mechanism. And so, because all the goodwill in the world won't work if the system is not built for it to work. So I really, I do think that the goodwill is there and the good intention is there, but the system, in my view, to protect the appearance of independence and also for efficiency's sake, really needs to be direct to Parliament in some way or another.
Thank you, Ms. Holloway. I also wanted to note the fact that I did write to you regarding the cases of alleged reprisal actions taken against individuals involved in the ARRIVESCAM scandal who had been critical of leadership at the CBSA, only to experience some serious repercussions. I know you've stated that you cannot comment on an ongoing investigation, but are you able to at least update us on where you are in the process of those investigations and perhaps even a timeline?
I cannot give you a timeline. I can tell you that it is among our active investigations.
Okay, thank you. Have you had any issues getting the department to cooperate or comply with any requests or in regard to your investigations?
At this time, I have no comment on that. Yeah.
Okay, and last question. During the course of an investigation, if you discover new information or if new information is provided, are you able to expand the investigation that you have undertaken in order to take that information into consideration?
Absolutely. And we have done that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Commissioner, you are the second commissioner to come before this committee in a week or so to talk about resource problems from the government, which is really striking to me. We have a fall fiscal update presented in Parliament yesterday that has over $60 billion in deficit. The government has no problem spending money on lots of things they want to spend money on, but they are doing their best to starve critical accountability mechanisms of Parliament of the resources that they need to investigate other spending and other decisions of government. And the Liberals suggest that we're opposed to this spending because we vote non-confidence in the government in general, which is obviously outrageous. If we had our way in that non-confidence vote, we would have a carbon tax election and likely a new prime minister that could actually address some of these systemic issues in government. But I want to ask you, Madam Commissioner, what are the conversations like that you have with the government about these resource issues? Obviously, you present to them, we've got a serious problem, and other leaders responsible for these accountability functions are presenting similar problems to the government. What do they say back to you when you raise these resource problems?
Well, I've engaged with public servants in the Treasury Board Secretariat as well as in finance. And it's I believe that they genuinely agree that we need to be resourced. I sense support.
Okay, so you as the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner are seeing a lack of resources. You're not getting the resources you need to do your job. You're talking to public servants who are recognizing the importance of your office and in conversation implying that they're supportive of the work that you need to be doing. We have a government, on the other hand, that is eager to fund anything and everything except accountability. Where do you think the problem lies? At what level are you getting pushback when you raise these problems?
I believe, as I mentioned before, that part of the issue is the process. And I think if the agents of Parliament could come directly to Parliament for their budget, then there would be clarity and no possibility to even infer or wonder whether there's any interference.
I mean, the process doesn't preclude the government from deciding to properly fund you. I mean, I have the fiscal update here, over $60 billion in deficits. There's a whole bunch of chapters and line items that basically just reinforce existing government messaging. How difficult would it have been for them to say as part of this that they're going to satisfy the funding requests of independent officers of Parliament to allow them to do their work? Surely the government would have had the power to announce that spending, and yet they chose not to. Why do you think the government has chosen not to at a time when they're facing all of these scandals? Why did they choose not to put the money into allowing you to do your work?
I couldn't comment.
Yeah. And I understand the difficult position you're in, but you and the procurement commissioner and others have said that you need these resources in order to do your work. Can I ask just about timelines as well? So we had the issue of officials that were involved in the ARRIVESCAM scandal saying that they faced intimidation after they appeared before committee. Some of those events took place a year ago. We've got the allegations for Mr. Hartle, very serious allegations that he brought forward, abuses associated with the Indigenous procurement scandal that were not referred to the RCMP. That was years ago. How long does it take you to complete these investigations? When can we expect some response? You mentioned you're doing some work on ARRIVESCAM, for instance. When can we expect that? What are the timelines of these various investigations?
I wish I could give you a definite timeline, and I really can't. I can tell you that the investigation is absolutely ongoing. As you probably know, we report to Parliament when there are findings of wrongdoing. If there's no finding of wrongdoing, we don't report that to Parliament. Which I think it's an important aspect of our work. So I wish I could provide you with more clarity on it. I can tell you that it's active.
It's just, it was a year ago that we had officials testify who subsequently said they faced reprisals. And I understand you can't give a specific timeline. It seems like the investigation is still open. Can you give an approximate timeline? Like, when can we expect this? We're talking about events over a year ago. So when can we expect to hear back about these very serious issues of abuse?
Just a brief response, please.
I can't say.
Okay. Is it linked to resource challenges that you don't know the timelines?
No. In this case, I don't believe so. It's an active investigation that's getting its full resource complement.
Okay.